Okay. Shall we get started? Are you ready to go, Simon?
Yep.
All right. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. And I guess I'll open the floor for any public comments. Hi, Reed. Thanks for joining us.
No public comment from me.
Okay. All right. Then I guess we'll roll right into the minutes from the last meeting. Simon, are you able to share those?
Yep. Okay. So I think that hopefully everyone can see that now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just had a question on page 2, down near the bottom. What does RFP stand for?
Request for
Correct.
proposals.
Ah, thank you. I had no idea.
All right. Any other questions or comments on the meeting summary? All right. Can I have a motion to approve then as submitted?
I will make a motion to approve as submitted. This is Laura.
Thank
I
you, Laura.
second.
Thank you, Kim. Any additional motion on the discussion or discussion on the motion? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes from August 3rd, please say aye.
Aye.
I
I'm
Any
abstaining,
opposed?
Eric.
Okay, thanks, Reed. Any opposed? And anyone else, would anyone else like to abstain?
Yes, I will.
Gary, okay. All right, there you go, Simon.
Right. Thank you.
Nice job once again, thank you. And all right, next up is Winooski Valley Park District with Nick and Reed. Thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Simon, I sent you a PowerPoint. Is it
Yeah.
any chance you could throw that up on the screen?
Sure.
Just because it's the PowerPoint that I brought to the Williston Select Board last April, related to the Jacob Krantz parcel, which I'd love to update you guys on. So as you know, over the last several years now, we've been working on the potential for the Park District turning the Jacob Krantz parcel into our 20th property. And we've had a great relationship with the Trinity Baptist Church, Randy Boardman being the prime point of contact, but certainly other people down there being very helpful. And also working with their engineer, Brian Courier, more directly on sort of the logistics of the project. And where we're at is, might as well just start scrolling through the slides. The situation is, it became clear early on that it was a landlocked parcel that if we went ahead and developed it would place all kinds of pressure on the adjoining neighborhoods for people parking on the streets and getting access to the park. So we looked at a number of different ways to get into the parcel. It's kind of a unique situation. You got a large utility right away down the middle. You've got a large parcel on one end that is owned by the Solid Waste District and also by Global Foundries. And we were working also with Trinity Baptist, and they had agreed pretty early on that they would at least allow a couple of parking spaces and access to the park.
Nick, sorry,
and-
can you see, I've got it in presenter view and I can't, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes,
Okay, great. If you just
Thank
tell
you.
me which slide you want and I'll move it on.
thank you. I think I'll sort of talk a little bit and then I'll run through
Yeah.
the slides, because the slide,
Okay.
my talk doesn't fit the slides perfectly, and it's 7:05 in the morning, so.
Yeah,
But so, and all along, Randy had said, well, at some point we'd like to do a housing project. So whatever we do, things are going to change in the future. And then the housing project planning started, and became pretty clear that we could integrate the plans for the park into the housing project. And the result is kind of a cool solution, which is a combination of, it kind of represents the history of the Conservation Board in some ways. There is an existing easement. And why don't we scroll forward in the presentation? Okay, there's the parcel, and there's a map of the existing trail center of the parcel. Keep scrolling forward. There's going to be another image of the parcel right there. Okay, this is the best image. You see the bright yellow line is the boundary line of the parcel. The dark blue line is an easement that was acquired through your open space planning process. And I'm not sure when the actual easement was acquired, but I believe it was acquired during the Bittersweet neighborhood approval process, and kind of lay fallow for many years, but is really going to make this all work, because it goes all the way to the edge of the Trinity Baptist parcel, which is at the bottom of the page. And the lighter blue line down at the bottom is on the Trinity Baptist land. And now if you go forward one or two slides, there, right there. So there is the sketch plan drawing of the housing project at Trinity Baptist, and they have put a trail easement and parking lot into their plan as part of their development, which is huge and really good act of good faith. I just got to emphasize how cooperative and enthusiastic the church has been since day one in supporting this project.
That's really nice, Nick. Nice job. I don't remember that parking lot being there when we reviewed this back in the pre-app or whatever it was back in April or so.
It's great stuff. I mean, I'm thrilled. So what the timeline is the next step is the discretionary application, preliminary application phase. They have until April as their deadline to file paperwork for that. And where I left off, I just checked my last email with Brian about 6 weeks ago. And we agreed that sometime after Labor Day, that our attorney, Ed Fitzpatrick, is going to connect with the Trinity Baptist Church and come up with some draft easement language, which will essentially match the easement language that exists for the existing easement in the back of the Bittersweet property. And once that's in place, it's interesting. The whole timing of this is really interesting, and how it affects their conservation credits and so forth. I mean, it's kind of a win-win-win-win-win for everybody. And once that's in place, we'll be coming back to you. And I did talk to my board a bit about it last night. We've already approved, we have this whole process that we go through to review potential acquisitions. My board already approved it, but I told them, I said, we're going to do this again, because it's been 3 years since we did the initial approval. But, we're set to go on this. We will coming back through to you guys probably in early 2023 to take another look at this and to talk about early management plan. We've done a natural resource inventory. We've done a lot of walkovers. We've done some initial ideas about how the park could be configured. I think that there's some broader planning decisions that we're not party to in terms of future path easements and how people and bikes and you know, things are going to evolve in Williston. So we certainly don't want to take title to a piece of land and then say, well, you can and can't do things and not understand that. So I think we're going to need to put our heads together with the folks in Williston planning and with you guys to understand, you know, is there any future path easement that needs to go through this property? I mean, it's really a unique part of town. You've got a huge property to the east that I know is a question mark in terms of future development. So before we would want to finalize anything, we want to make sure that any necessary easements or allowances are put in place. We do have operating principles. You know, we don't allow hunting. We know there's been informal hunting on the land over the years, so we don't know if that still exists, whether we're going to be displacing people. And we're certainly not looking to create a mountain bike park. You know, that we don't think it's being used for that. But I mean, these are all the issues that we look at before we take final control and title over a piece of land. But the plan was, and this, you know, we're dusting this off a little bit, is that once we had a coherent plan in place and once we had the access figured out, that we would come back to the town and formally ask the select board to transfer the land to the park district. For those that are not familiar with us, we're both a 501c3 and municipality, so that the land becomes exempt. It's already exempt because the town owns it, so that's less of an issue for you guys. But you know, it's a fairly significant change when you put it under our management, because we will be looking to do some kind of permanent conservation protection on the land. I have not really started that process yet. Typically, we work with a third party like a VHCB or some other organization to do a conservation easement on it. I haven't even thought that through yet. I've been so focused on the access and the logistics of the park. So there's a lot of details that need to be figured out. But this was the big one. And I got to say, once again, I'm so grateful to the church. It's been such a great process. And, you know, a couple of years ago, we hosted a walkover and had members of the community show up. I think it's going to create interesting conversations with the folks in Bittersweet. I don't know if they're going to want to build a connecting trail. There's already some informal trails that connect. And similarly with you know, other neighbors. But this should take care of any you know, access issues for people wanting to, frankly, to drive to the park and be able to utilize it. So that's where things are at with Jacob Krantz. We're pretty thrilled, and now, you know, now it's time to get the language of the easement up and going, and that'll be sometime after Labor Day. And more broadly speaking, so Reed is joining us. I've been dragging her through trustee meetings. We had a real packed agenda last night. For some reason, the forces of nature have made this last couple of weeks extremely busy for us. It's not as much related to Williston, but there's a couple of really interesting things going on for us. One is we may have a new member. The city of Essex did a presentation to their select board, which went extremely well. I think they're going to be supportive, but certainly the select board was, or excuse me, city council was very supportive. And they are obviously building a city from scratch, and it's a really interesting process to watch. So we did that presentation, and they take this to a vote in November for membership in the park district, and I think they have a good understanding of what it means. Interestingly, Woodside Park, barely a portion of Woodside Park is in the city. Most of it is in the town. So they do have parkland within their town. That didn't seem to be as much of an issue for them. They feel like they need to be a regional supporter and that they're benefiting from Park District parks. So, you know, it went extremely well. We'll see what the voters say. You know, they're dealing with much bigger issues financially, so I don't think they're as concerned about the annual payment. I think they just want to keep things going. They have, you know, the village has been bundled with the town of Essex since the beginning. So the grand list and the population of the town and the village have always been part of the Park District formula. So they've been a supporter since the beginning. So this would essentially be a continuation of what has occurred since 1970s. Another really interesting project for us is the development of the Vermont Indigenous Heritage Center. I'm sitting here at Ethan Allen Homestead Park, which is 294 acres here in Burlington. We have the museum barn. A lot of you, I'm sure, have been to the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. For the last several years, we've been working with Alnabiwi, which is a confederation of the 4 tribes, Abenaki tribes in Vermont, to build a cultural center. And it's already in place, but it's we're renovating the interior of the barn using some money that Patrick Leahy brought to us last year. We're also fundraising elsewhere. And it's a really tremendous project, and construction starts in October. And so all the details and weekly project meetings and fundraising around that has been really interesting and fun challenge. We're also very much engaged in looking at our capital assets writ large in our parks. You know, every year we have new projects. Most recently, we just rebuilt a boardwalk at Woodside, but we have, I think the next big project for us will be the Colchester Pond facility. We're going to get, we got an initial grant to do basically a carrying capacity study. It's one of our most heavily used assets, and we want to make sure that, you know, I think the initial stuff will be, we're going to be moving some trails around and doing some stuff to reduce human impact. We have a historic farmhouse there and barn that we need to renovate, and we also got a donation of 10 acres a couple years ago with and there's a potential for a new access off of East Road in Colchester, because we have a right of way that goes right up to the edge of the park. So from our big capital projects right now, it's the Indigenous Heritage Center, but we're already starting to ramp up to think about Colchester Pond over the next 2 or 3 years. In terms of working with Williston, I'm looking forward to meeting Simon. Obviously, we've been working with Melinda. We do a lot of side work for you guys. Tim has done some work there this year. That's been a great relationship. It's just a way on a hourly basis. Our crew has been helping you maintain your conservation assets. And that's something that's really worked quite well, I think, for both of us. And we're looking forward to continue over the coming years. We'll be coming back in about, in September. We essentially approve our FY24 budget. This is a bizarre time of year when we're closing out FY22, we're in FY23, and we have to predict what we're going to spend in FY24. So we'll have a draft budget for you probably early October. Our board is going to take a first look at it at our September meeting. And we're going to, as always, we're going to try to keep our costs as tight as possible. We are benefiting from this new project here because it does mean new lease income. We also are a fiscal agent on some of the grants, which is another way that we're able to bring some income into the organization. So that's a lot of things, but that's the brief overview. You guys have any questions or concerns?
So I have a question about the Jacob Grants parcel.
Yes, thank you.
So I am not remembering that the Conservation Commission kind of gave a green light for the site plan for that. I know there was some discussion about moving the road and thing over to the other side of the parcel where they didn't have the athletic fields. And correct me if I'm wrong, and this is just what I'm remembering. I thought we were talking about that is actually a significant wildlife habitat area that we've identified. And so we were looking to maybe get one of those roads moved over, but I could be remembering wrong, but
Oh, interesting. Okay.
yeah, I do.
So on that, they got their pre-app done in November last year. And as part of that, there was recommendations adopted by the DRB. And I think the DRB asked for them to explore like pushing the two road accesses further apart. And I think the Conservation Commission, this leads back into Eric's and everyone's queries about like ordering the priority of the conservation interests, because it was, from memory, it's view shed sort of in the south of the parcel, and then wildlife habitat in the north. So they've gone away to think about that with the recommendations. They'll need to come back as part of their discretionary permit. They also made a commitment of growth management in 2023 this year, sorry, 2022 March. As part of that, they said they would be providing this trailhead with parking. They scored 10 points for that, which is the most they can get. And that means that they have to do that. They can't not do that because they are held to their growth management. Otherwise, they'll have to forfeit everything they've got so far and come back in. I think they've got 14 units, so I would assume that they will come in again for a pre-app this year to try and to get into growth management next year to get more homes for that.
But I guess to Terry's point,
Yeah.
the road may not be, the road may stay where we have suggested it not stay, correct?
Yeah, so they're going to be looking at replanning it. So they might move it to, you know, go in the athletic field and keep the athletic field where it is, and that'll be something we get into them with them on the discretionary permit application.
So it sounds like that's not really like a discussion for Nick, but rather
Yeah, I mean, I
we
think,
made the recommendation and it is
Yeah.
what it is.
I guess Nick just, you know, wherever the road is, you know, you have to be able to get to this trailhead. So whether they bring the parking lot slightly further into the site and have, you know, a primitive trail going across their land, whether they keep the trail there, sort of is up for them to come up with some site plans.
Yeah, it's less of an issue where they would actually put the parking area, as long as there's trail access to the parcel. It really has almost zero impact on us. In many ways, having the parking area closer to the road, the main road, would be more of a feature. But you know, we told them early on, so wherever it fits for you guys and makes sense from a permitting and impact standpoint. So it happened, as it so happens, they put it right next to the trailhead. You know, originally there was the concept was, you know, they had an existing park, they have an existing sort of flat area between the sort of in the middle of the athletic fields. And that was the initial thought, and then it went to a different location, and now they put it right next to the trailhead. But for us, it doesn't matter.
Okay, thanks, Simon, for that update. I didn't know that was in the works.
It's a very complicated process, the discretionary permit, the way things are. I struggle to keep track of it, and I go to every DRB meeting.
Yeah, and Terry, that's just kind of a reflection, I think, on our process where we make recommendations to the planning commission or whoever on DRB, I guess, on a particular project, and then we don't see anything or hear about it again until it comes back around for discretionary permit or until they break ground.
Okay,
that's been you know, just one of those things where we've acknowledged that probably just about annually or so for a long time and haven't really figured out a good solution.
Okay, yeah, I'm still haven't done enough of these to know the process. Okay, thanks.
I must say, just an editorial comment, it is striking how this entity created, this town created an open space plan, in the late 80s. And then I think this trail easement that we're tying into was created in the 90s. So it's long-term planning is a good thing.
Yep. And you had a role in at least one of those things,
Yes.
didn't you, Nick?
Yeah. No, Simon, I staffed the conservation board back in 93 and 4, I think, when I was in
Wow.
grad school. So yeah. Back when my hair was brown. Yep. Gary remembers.
I don't believe it. I don't believe
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have like a rough schedule for when you anticipate all this happening? I guess it depends on Trinity, but
It really does depend on the flow of the permit. I mean, they literally could not make any commitments until the process got to a certain point. We asked early on, do we ask for an easement now? And they said, no, we actually need to get through the process to understand what we can and can't do with the town. And that's what this discretionary permit is. So they have until April. So sometime before April. And, according to Brian, they want to address it this fall. So we'll have draft easement language probably by Thanksgiving, I'm guessing. And then I would say spring of 2023, where there's going to be a whole bunch of flurry of activity around, planning for the parcel, getting an initial management plan in place, and then coming back through the process via you guys first, and then to the select board to finalize the transfer. And then it'll probably take another full calendar year after that to get through the grant cycle, because we're guessing probably $50,000 or $60,000 worth of trail work and signage initially to get the park up and going. Most of it to build the bridge that will go across the brook between Trinity Baptist and the path easement. That'll be the biggest part of the infrastructure. It's a beautiful site. If you haven't been out there, there's trails in place, some better than others, but it's really a striking variety of habitat all packed into one parcel.
Hey, Nick, I'm just curious, this is Laura here.
Yes.
When you acquire a piece of property, do you have particular policies on hunting, like no hunting? Is it always no hunting, or do you see what the parcel is like?
We have a no hunting policy in all our parks.
Mhm.
However, it's been, we've had interactions, really positive interactions with the folks at Vermont Fish and Wildlife, and we're intentionally educating ourselves. And it's been a while because I think COVID kind of knocked us sideways on this. But I've been personally emphasizing with my board, we really need to understand the relationship of hunting and conservation and the positive relationships. Most of our parks are frankly just inappropriate and wouldn't really work for hunting. There are some exceptions. There are some parts of our parcels which could be hunted that are adjacent to larger parcels. And our board we're not virulently anti-hunting. It's just from a management perspective, that's been our policy. I think this parcel would be really problematic to allow hunting, except for, our authority ends at the high water mark. So if you want to duck hunt and carry a gun over our land, that's fine. We don't, at Delta Park, that happens in some of our other shoreline areas. So we want to be supportive to the sportsman community, but currently we do have no hunting policy. As we grow over the years, I think we're going to have to, look at that again. And so the board, particularly right before the pandemic, we were really starting to educate ourselves on the relationship between hunting and conservation and the impact on the land. So it's a long way of saying, I don't think this parcel would be appropriate for that. But like I said, if you're a duck hunter and you carry a gun over our land, that's your right and privilege. So we certainly don't police that. Very supportive of fishing everywhere. So a lot of fishing happens in our land.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I have kind of I don't know, random, it's not really random, but just a question about your parks in Burlington and why. So I'm looking at your map and Delta Park and Mays Landing and Durway Island. So is there an advantage to keeping those as three and managing them as three separate parks as opposed to just combining them all into one larger park?
They're actually Durway Island, which is the 150-acre parcel, is contiguous with Durway Cove, which is 2.5 acres. They're named differently because you do different things on each parcel. But the management plan for Durway Island is actually in conjunction with Fish and Wildlife for their properties across the river. So we actually have a management plan that is consistent across the two. Like, of course, hunting is allowed on one side and not on the other. But other than that, and actually, frankly, we didn't even have to address hunting because you cannot discharge a weapon in Burlington. So that would be, you asked that question about hunting, that would be an issue at Durway Island if that ordinance was not in place. Mays Landing is just a postage stamp size parcel. They are all essentially managed the same. And, you know, Durway Cove is a little bit different because it has an access road. It's got a place you can put your canoe in. You can directly access the shoreline. So it's kind of a different physical location.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And how are things going over at the Muddy Brook? Oh, is that the one? No, what's the one that you have? And you have one that's like borders Williston or something now, right? Is that Muddy Brook Park?
Yeah, it's Muddy Brook, right?
Yep.
16. That's what I'm thinking of. Muddy Brook Wetland Reserve.
Yeah, actually, we just got a nice note from a new neighbor over there. It's surprisingly, I'd say surprisingly, but it's popular. It's a lot of people run there, and it's also being a wetland habitat and floodplain. It's just from a ecological standpoint, it's an incredible place. We've done a series of plantings there recently. It also falls under the area that's being dealt with by the Champlain Valley Partnership, which is actually a really cool and effective group. It's a group of 4 towns that is acknowledging that there's a swath of land that sort of hydrologically all connects to Shelburne Pond. And our park superintendent, Tim, is the lead for us on that. And from that grouping, we've been able to mobilize multiple volunteers from different entities to do a bunch of plantings and invasive removals and trail upgrades and so forth. And, you know, Muddy Brook is right sort of in the center of all that. So it's getting more and more use. It's really interesting how that park has become more popular, especially since COVID. I know you're probably seeing the same thing. You know, the first day of the stay-at-home order, our parking lots filled up, and it really hasn't stopped. And people have just created new habits, which is great, and we're just thrilled about that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
A lot of mosquitoes there, just so you know.
All right. Any other questions for Nick or for Reed? All right. Well, thanks for logging in. And so, did I hear you say you're going to join us for our trail walk at 8:30?
I'm actually going to meet with Simon and Reed after your trail walk.
Oh, after the trail work. Okay.
So where should I go, Simon?
I think we agreed on just at the Allenbrook Community Park.
Sure.
There's some picnic tables up there, and I think the weather's probably going to hold for that long. Any opportunity to meet outside?
Yes.
Yeah.
What part
So
of
if you go into the community school,
Yes.
follow the road around it goes to the
To the right?
to the right, yeah,
Yep.
and then follow it north, and you get to there's a sort of parking lot, and it's
Yes.
just past that.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Look forward to that.
All right.
Thanks.
And I just
everyone.
wanted to say thanks, Reed, for representing Williston and for
Yes.
supporting the Park District.
Thank you. I think I wore them out last night, so hopefully she sticks with it. We had a rather busy meeting last night, so thank you, everyone, for your time. I appreciate it.
Good to see you, Nick.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you. See ya. All right. Next up, we have the Mud Pond Trail Improvements with Fellowship of the Wheel. Are they joining us, Simon, for this part?
They were, they're not here yet, so I guess we're 4 minutes early, so.
Okay.
Guess
Do
we'll see.
you have other things you want to update us on?
So nothing major. I think just following last meeting, I spoke with Christine, our stormwater coordinator. So she's definitely happy to come along and give us an update on, I think it was the Allen Brook stormwater restoration, if you want to schedule that in when we've got a bit of time. I spoke with Jens over at Vermont about the strategic wildlife habitat area. He was just interested in where things stood, so I told him, the work that you guys and Melinda have done on the map and the bylaw text, and then we'd be looking to sort of take this up again towards the end of the year or beginning of the next. I sent him what we had there, and so he's up to speed on that. I think I reached out to Walt Pullman a couple of times. I guess he'll get back to me shortly. I know from when in my previous life I worked at UMass Boston, and I was always told by the provost's office there that don't expect to get a reply from faculty during the summer break because they don't have to. So I don't know if that's the same as UVM.
I
I'm
feel
sure-
attacked. I
was to
respond
say-
to my emails during the summer.
Well, I was always in the fortunate position of they generally tended to respond to me because I told them I was going to go around and mess around with their stuff. So I always got a response, but I understand it. If you're on your break, you're on your break. You shouldn't have to respond to emails.
And I know that, or I will confess that I have not done anything with my part of the annual report. I don't know if there's other work that has been done or still needs to be done, but it's a good reminder to me that I'm supposed to be working on that.
Yeah,
I
I
started-
haven't done Carl's write-up yet either.
I started looking into the what we did in the last fiscal year versus this fiscal year in terms of the SWHA rework, and most of it was in last fiscal year, but I'm going to try to pull out some nuggets as we tried to extrapolate it for other uses.
Any word, Simon, on the dedication of the annual report? I know you spoke with somebody at the town about it.
I'm not sure exactly what the time scale is. I know that Eric will be putting it on the select board agenda at some point. I don't know when. I know they only met once. They're only meeting once in August, so I think they've got a bit of catching up to do.
Okay. Thanks. And I see Adam has joined us from Fellowship of the Wheel. Welcome, Adam. Thanks for logging in this morning. And I think we're ready to roll right on into that agenda item.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all again. I was on a meeting last year to introduce this project and was able to secure some funding through a grant over the winter to cover the material costs. So if anyone was not present for that meeting, we're hoping to do some upgrades to the bridges to bring them to a 48-inch width in the Mud Pond Country Park. This is going to provide access to adaptive riders. which we've partnered with Vermont Adaptive, and they're very excited to do so, and working on building out fleets of bikes and programming for future events. We actually have one coming up on August 28th at Sunny Hollow, where we did these upgrades in 2018. So throughout the next year, we're going to be doing the bridge upgrades this year, and then some sections of the trail will need a little bit of upgrading throughout next year. And that's going to involve just a little bit of extra benching and making sure some rock obstacles and things will be wide enough to provide access for the adaptive bikes. And this also, bodes well for any newer rider, beginner rider, kids, sort of full scale walkers, runners. If any of you have been across some of the bridges, one of those first ones is rather high and pretty narrow and pretty slippery. So we're going with a natural wood 48-inch width, and all around it's just going to be, sort of a little bit nicer with the tread that's already existing there. One detail to discuss with this committee is we're going to have a wood delivery. As of right now, we were able to get the wood delivery scheduled for August 30th, which I think is like a Wednesday. And this would involve basically a truck would pull up and deposit. It's going to be 125 boards, 16-foot boards. And it would be on the roadside, sort of where the trail entrance is, where the kiosk is, and then we'll quickly move those boards in behind the kiosk. And then over the course of a couple of weeks, we'll migrate that wood into the different working sites. So that's one logistic to cover. If there's any comments or concerns regarding that, and the temporary storage of the wood by the kiosk there.
Simon, do we need to tell anybody else at the town about that, or like have
And we should tell
info
Public
on the
Works.
road?
If there's going to be a truck stop, I don't know how long it takes to offload this stuff. But if there's going to be a truck stopping on the road, and I guess it's just leaving it on the by the trail entrance, clear of the right of way, is it?
So
Should we also, sorry, Adam.
go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if we should tell the neighbors, like
Yeah.
FYI, it might be
I think that's a good
plan to
idea.
not drive this direction, or since we know that there are some neighbors who get disrupted by activity there, maybe giving them a heads up would feel nice to them.
And I
Maybe
would
Public
maybe suggest they have someone maybe there to direct traffic, because I go by there quite often, and it's it's just, you come upon it quickly. So if they could put up maybe orange cones or have somebody there flagging down traffic. And you might want to suggest to, or might want to put the wood a little further in, just out of view. Just, for theft, you just don't want to leave it out there, especially with wood being as expensive as it is these days.
Yeah. So most of the thoughts here are sort of incorporated into our plan for the wood delivery. So to have cones, and we've done this a couple times at Saxon Hill, because we're doing similar upgrades there. And it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to have the truck parked there. And they just sort of like tip the loader down and slide the wood off in a pallet. And then, we'll be able to move it over the course of like 2 or 3 hours. We're going to have 4 of us there, just moving those boards into the woods. And then over the course of like a week or 2, we'll get those moved closer to the working sites. So I'm hoping the overall disruption is going to be a pretty short window, especially on the road. It's a pretty quick and slick drop off. And then it'll just be a couple hours while we move it just into the woods. And then the following days, we'll start moving that wood into the actual working sites, you know, to try to discourage anybody from snagging a free board.
I agree with you, Kim, though we should let folks know what date it's occurring, even if we don't know the exact time. And even if it's going to be a short disturbance, just letting them know that there is going to be a delivery on that day, and that there'll be a disturbance on the road for less than an hour or something like that. Would probably feel better to those who have been on edge about activities there.
Yeah, and I agree with that too, just because, you know, anytime a truck pulls up to your local trails, people probably wonder what, you know, what's going on there. We did a couple bridge repairs in there from over the winter. Some of the boards had sort of collapsed, and we had a small wood delivery, just like 5-6 boards to bring in to patch up some of those bridges. And while I was stopped there, somebody stopped and sort of said, "Hey, what's y'all good? What's going on?" So I can understand and appreciate the need to let everybody know. Another update. So I had spoken with Melinda earlier this summer because when we met the first time with this committee, there was you know, some feedback of, you know, possibly going directly from the parking lot to the road crossing and providing access there for adaptive riders, so that, you know, these adaptive cycles are typically lower to the ground than a normal bicycle. And so I went and looked at the corridor that takes you from the parking area to the road crossing to see, you know, what kind of work would be needed there and if it was even a possibility. And then I went and walked it with Melinda to just sort of discuss a little bit of the talking points of, you know, here's some of the minor upgrades that would be needed because there is a stream crossing there. And that stream crossing is sort of like a, you know, hopscotch from one rock to another. And there's also a couple steep grades, which would be really challenging to, you know, not only an adaptive cycle, but walkers and other users as well. So when I walked it with Melinda, you know, she sort of recommended meeting with this group to sort of go over what that would look like. And I spoke with Simon last week about possibly doing that at the next meeting on site at Mud Pond. There's a section of trail that has a pretty steep grade right out of the parking area. And there's potential for a nice go around. I've got some dogs coming in from their morning walk, so you may see some tails wagging here. But there's a pretty short connection that could be made right from the parking area that I think would improve that for all users. And if it's well signed, it is very easy to keep, you know, any of these adaptive cycles from wandering a direction that they're not supposed to into that conservation land. You know, like some of the topic of providing that access to the trails could raise concerns about people wandering off into some of the other conservation trails. But we find that if, you know, if it's well signed and well communicated, you know, people respect that. You know, people that aren't going to respect, you know, the conservation land closures and things like that are probably already out there doing it. And as far as I know, that's not a major issue in those trails. And having that connection directly to the road crossing would be a big improvement for potentially doing some of this programming with Vermont Adaptive, and you know, even just having, you know, kids and families be able to use that one corridor. So
do you have a map that we could like see where it is, or do we have, Simon, do we have a copy of the map so we can see what exactly where Adam is talking about? Because I overall agree. I think that like the road crossing, it worries me as a parent.
So there's I don't actually, I would love to have a map that I could prepare ahead of the next meeting.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So I only have maps for the Mud Pond Country Park on the other side of the road.
Do we have a layer that we can, what do you want? Do you want like a GIS layer, or like what do you?
Anything's fine, and I can just use Photoshop to sort of identify with little X's where work would be needed. But it would probably be a bridge over the stream, and then for those of you that know the trails well, immediately after the stream crossing, there's an area that most of the spring it's pretty wet and muddy, and it sort of has like braided areas that try to evade some of the mud, and there's a couple sticks and rocks laid down so that you can sort of hop through those muddy areas. So we would do a little boardwalk in that area as well, just to get you to there's a little right-hand turn that then takes you over to Mud Pond Country Park. So there'd be a couple upgrades with some actual like boardwalk and bridge infrastructure that would help sort of protect that trail from continuing to braid. I also, as part of this project, I met with Tina Heath, who's the wetlands, sort of permitting specialist for Chittenden County. And all the upgrades that we're making in Mud Pond Country Park didn't trigger any kind of permitting. And all of those things, because your bridging would help sort of improve any disturbance to some of the wet areas where we cross. And she also agreed that if there were a connection, since we had to walk that section of trail to get to Mud Pond Country Park, I just sort of mentioned it to her, and she agreed again that, anytime you're bridging or boardwalking, that's the sort of preferred method for any trail that's going to cross through some of those wet areas. So again, like all of those improvements were viewed as favorable from Tina and the state's perspective on wetlands, and didn't trigger any kind of permitting.
I have a question on whether it was explored at all to put a little small parking area for maybe 3 or 4 vehicles on the other side of the road where the trailhead is. It seems so much less disruptive to put a small parking area over there. That wouldn't probably wouldn't be or couldn't be maintained in the winter, but for whenever there wasn't snow. But I just go by there all the time, and it seems like there is kind of space for a little parking area there.
I'll just remind you that Melinda and I did like over a year of analysis trying to figure out if there could be parking anywhere else for Mud Pond, and did a huge presentation to the select board and extensively went through all of these options, and it's all in the notes and the records, and there's really not another option. I know it seems like there must be, but there's really not. And it's not Adam's, like that's not Fellowship of the Wheels to figure out. If there was something, it would be ours, but it's not Adam's.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought that'd be so much easier solution. And I know there was an issue with the neighbors who didn't really want to have another parking area there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've offered this before, but if you want, I'll give you all the stuff that Melinda, because this comes up frequently. Like this question comes up frequently, and there's like a lot of work and analysis that went into it, and presentations, and like the select board coming back to us and saying like, well, what about this? And the neighbor coming to the select board, and like a ton of work went into trying to figure it out.
Okay.
There's just like not a spot.
I don't think that was when I was on the commission.
No, it wasn't. It was before. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And will there have to be dedicated handicap spots at the parking on Mud Pond area? So does that mean there'll have to be 2 ADA spots or 3, whatever, designated just for handicap, and that parking area will lose?
I believe Matt told us that there has to be anyway, that currently we have to comply with that regardless. And I think we're not right now. So yes.
Even though the trails are not handicapped accessible.
Yeah, because somebody who has a handicap parking they could just decide to walk on them even though the trails aren't, right? Like we still have to comply with all public parking regardless of.
Okay, all right, good, thanks.
Is that correct, Simon? I believe that's my memory of what Matt told
Yeah.
us in a previous.
There's also different ranges of disabilities. Someone with a badge may be perfectly capable of walking the trails on my pond.
Adam, have you looked at making the actual road crossing safer? Like, is it the town that would paint lines, or if it came to that?
Yeah, I think you know, a crosswalk and a couple signs would be great, and to help with that. Melinda had also mentioned, you know, possibility of having a little bit of funding to help assist with, you know, the overall implementation of this project, and some of that could go to something like signage to have, you know, like a pedestrian and bike crossing signage there on the road. And you know, I would sort of look to the advisory of this group here to help decide what that ultimately looks like. And I also think you know, so Simon, you know, has put time on the agenda for the next meeting to do something on site. And actually, I was just looking through and saw that there is some maps in the meeting notes or the meeting agenda for this, which I can use to send as a follow-up ahead of that meeting with just a little bit more information of you know, sort of the upgrades and infrastructure that would be needed for that short section of trail.
Simon, would it make sense for us to invite somebody from Public Works to attend that site visit? I suppose we could, you know, take photographs and talk through a proposal of what we think could help with safety crossing. But I was wondering whether it would be easier just to have somebody look at it in person with us.
I can ask.
All right, so anything else, Adam? It sounds like we're gonna see you in a couple weeks.
That's it for me. You know, I'll send a follow-up with a little more information on the map ahead of that, and also just to check in about any other communication that's needed for August 30th for that wood delivery. And otherwise, we should be all set. And thank you all for helping us
All
through
right.
this.
Thanks for
Yeah.
coming, Adam.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for your
Adam.
time.
There's
All right, next up, we have our trail steward update and SE report. And thanks for logging in this morning.
Oh, you're on mute, Ann. And good morning.
Good morning. That better? Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ann O'Day, and I've in my second year as the trail steward, retired from the financial services industry, and this is a great retirement job for me. So thanks for the opportunity. I also live in Williston Village, so I'm interested in doing everything I can to make sure we have, you know, sustainable, walkable, enjoyable trails here. So it's a lot of fun. I thought what I'd do is just kind of give you an overview of what we've been working on this year so far, and then just open it up and whatever direction you want to take it in, or discuss the SE report. That's great, if that sounds okay. So I'm working about 15 hours a week this year we cut it back a little bit and extended the season. And so for the same budget money, I can work longer. I think that works better. Works better for me, and I think it works better for maintaining the trails. So I started in late April, and the reason for that is we need to mark the boundary lines every year. We need to update the dates on all of the no hunting stickers on all the boundaries, which is a pretty big job. And it's traditionally been done in August and September when the growth is at its peak and there's lots of berry bushes and other things to navigate your way through, which isn't very enjoyable. And after doing it last year and getting pretty bloodied up every time I was out, I decided that it made more sense to do it at a different time of the year. So we did that.
And how much time savings do you think that is? Is it like twice as fast? Is it?
Oh, good question. I would say not twice as fast, but maybe 20-30% faster and significantly more enjoyable. And
you can't put a dollar value on that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's, and you know, the besides the growth, the visibility is much better. So I didn't need to, you know, use a GPS really at all. I could just look and see where the next sign was, which isn't the case when you do it in, you know, fall or late summer. Yeah, so that took maybe the first 3 into the beginning of May. And then, you know, things still haven't started to grow that much, but we did have 3 storms this year. So I think Melinda said she never had experienced so many trees down ever before. So we had 3 storms that took big trees down, each of them. And so that required, you know, work from me. I could do the little ones, but we had to bring in some help for the others. And on Allenbrook, the Public Works did those, and you know, they were terrific. Got right out there and got that trail back into shape. The other ones were on Mud Pond and Suckerbrook, and we had Tim from the Winooski Valley come in and do those, and he's also excellent and really responsive. So got that taken care of. And also in, you know, early in the year, June, beginning in July, we did some infrastructure work. We had the VYCC needed to train a new crew coming in. And so they wanted a project to use as a, you know, hands-on training. And initially we had them out at the Schmoker Trail to do some work on that big long punch-in. And we rethought that because number one, that trail isn't used as much as some of the others. Number two, it's a very dangerous place to work. Oak Hill and Old Creamery. And there isn't much parking at all. There isn't any parking really right now. So we decided to put in an 80-foot punch-in in a really muddy spot in Suckerbrook. So we get a pretty good deal from them when they're training, because I think we only pay labor to the leaders, and we pay obviously for the material. And so they did that work as a training sort of tool opportunity, and sort of a secondary benefit was I got trained. So I participated in some of the training and you know, had some power tool safety and lessons, and also you know, how to do a punch-in right. So that enabled me to do some work on 5 Tree on the punch-ins, and you know, built a couple new ones and replaced some boards there. And so so we got a little bit of infrastructure work done so far this year. And we've also been taught, we met with VYCC yesterday to, they have another program with the local high schools, CVU and possibly Winooski, to do 1 or 2 days a week with a bunch of students on projects. So they wanted to see if we had anything that might fit into that. And we, of course, we do. We still need to do some work on the budgeting and that kind of stuff. But we have a place on Sucker Brook that needs a bridge, and we're hoping that they'll do that this fall. And then, you know, if there's more time, we can identify some other areas too. So that's kind of a little bit about the infrastructure. I also, you know, the rest of it's just kind of ongoing maintenance, mowing, clearing trails, you know, cutting back brush, picking up trash, making sure the parking areas are clean and presentable and respectable. And I restored the view on Mud Pond. I think it's west of the pond. We have a viewing platform out there, but there was nothing to view given the new growth. So, you know, I cut back, topped some of the trees. So now you can see the pond again. So that's nice. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's, as far as the maintenance, the big, you know, I guess the big theme this year is the wild parsnip. And, you know, that's just, I don't know whether it's a bad year for it or what, but it seems like it's a lot worse than it was last year. And
It does, yes.
Yeah, it's required fair amount of attention from me to keep it clear from the Commons Trail in particular, and also it's the Allen Brook has a couple of spots.
Yeah, I noticed that there's some, I was jogging through the Allen Brook Trail a couple weeks ago, right past the wayside sign for the beaver dam, and I had to, like,
Yeah, right.
dive out of the way because there's parts that was leading away over the trail.
Oh, yeah, well, hopefully that's okay now.
Great, good.
Right
thank
now,
you.
I go out there quite regularly to make sure, especially on that trail, because
Yeah, there's a lot of kids using that one.
yeah, a lot of kids, and we have had an email from a couple parents. But, you know, I think you can walk it now without touching any of it, even though,
Right.
you know, and then Chapin put an article in the paper, which is really helpful. I don't know if anyone read it, but because there is some misunderstanding of wild parsnip and how it works.
We're actually doing a little experiment up in North Hero about, and I think I was chatting about this, just clipping off the seed heads and putting them into a bag before they actually get brown, so they don't drop on the ground and reseed. And hopefully it'll take a few years, I think, but that'll slow down the reseeding, because isn't the parsnip is a biennial?
Right.
pretty
The
sure.
first year, it's just a little low greenery, and then the second year it sends up the flowering head. Yep.
Right. So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens, but I did a lot of snipping of flower heads of parsnip.
So yeah, so that's kind of a big picture overview of what I've been working on and what we've got upcoming. And I did review that SE report pretty thoroughly. So if you had any questions on that or want to discuss that, that's fine.
Yes. I don't have any questions, but I think I just want to say it looks like a really nice report, a nice tool to have for these half dozen or so different parks. I'm really impressed with it. The maps alone are really nice, I think.
Oh yeah, I had never seen it until the last, couple, 3 weeks. And yeah, it's very, very detailed and comprehensive. And I would say a lot of the recommendation, not a lot, but some of them we've already done. And, you know, I would say there's a lot that are very minor that, you know, probably, you know, it would be nice to do them, but it's not critical to do them, in my opinion. And then some of the big projects, you know, I'm not sure they have to be done right away, but I guess the biggest one would be that big bridge on Mud Pond East. And it's sort of, it's not, I don't know, it's rolling a little bit. It needs some resetting, but I don't know if that needs to be done imminently, or I
Is
don't
that
think it does.
Is that the part along South Road?
No. This is the one, the big, long bridge that, I don't know.
The
Boy
raised
Scouts
plat-
did it.
Yeah.
Platform, yeah. It's really long.
I think that was VYCC, is that right?
Not sure.
Sounds right. Yeah. Built about 12 years
But,
ago
you
or
know,
so.
I'm not sure it's a safety issue. They recommend putting some, you know, handrails up, which, you know, it's not an area of trails that's particularly, you know, popular. I mean, it just, there's no parking. Oh, that parking area kind of washed out over on off of Oak Hill. And I did talk to Public Works about bringing in a load of fill, and they said they would do that. They haven't gotten to it yet. So I'm expecting that, but really what they recommended in terms of a long-term solution is to close that down. So it's hard to use that trail, and, you know, unless you're coming from South Road. Not a ton of people do that.
I think Melinda was talking about a couple of years ago about maybe working with the Yandows to put a parking area in there. But she said that would be down the road, but it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a big, yeah, that's beyond my scope.
yeah. But it would be nice to get some fill in there. Because
Yeah.
if you have a trail.
Short-term fix, yep.
Yeah.
coming.
So, okay, so did you have anything else, Ann? Otherwise, I think we're gonna meet
No,
you, right?
that's it.
At the
Yeah, unless
Allenbrook
there's any-
Boardwalk in a little bit.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so we are going to meet where, Simon, at the pavilion or picnic tables at the entrance to the community park at 8:30. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I think I said the trailhead.
Oh, the trailhead, okay.
Yeah.
So down past by behind the baseball diamond.
Yeah.
Is that you go by the library and then take a right and
Yep.
go down there?
It's where the
Yep.
story walks are that the library has
Yes.
been setting up
Oh,
for
but-
kids.
Skate park. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, but so then you take the bike path loop around over to the trailhead over by where the new bridge was constructed. So, all right. We'll
I'm
see
just
you
letting
all-
everybody know that I'm bringing my children, and hopefully
Okay.
that's gonna work out.
They have more to
All right.
contribute. That's good.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, they definitely have contributions. We can judge the utility of
Excellent.
them as a group.
All
See you
right.
soon.
Well, we'll look forward to that. See you all at 8:30.